And listen, folks, in tonight's policy breakdown, I want to have a conversation with you about immigration. Now, I haven't done a policy breakdown about immigration before because I thought I would wait till it got real good and proper and great, and I think now is the time to do it. So, before I talk about the actual immigration bill, and what the bill does and what it doesn't do, I want to talk to you about the power of immigration in this country. And yeah, to start out, as I always say, we might be a nation of laws, but we are also a nation of immigrants. And being that we are a nation of immigrants, we have to understand the power that immigration has in sort of architecting how our country grows and how our country expands and how our country continues to do the great work that it does. Now let's have a real conversation about this. Now there's a couple reasons why immigration or immigrants have made America a better place. I think one of those reasons, the first thing that comes to mind is immigrants improve technological innovation. Beyond the fact that Albert Einstein was an immigrant to this country, that helped us create the nuclear bomb, high school immigrant workers boost innovation and in turn increase the productivity and utility of their surrounding workforce. And you just look at it. Look at all the great examples of that. Look at places like Silicon Valley. Over half of all new startups have been started by foreign-born founders, and 40% of the Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or their children. Even though foreign-born individuals only make up an eighth of America's population. You heard that? So 40% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by either immigrants or first-generation Americans, even though they only make up 1/8 of the American population. Shows the power that immigrants and the immigration has on this country. Immigration, I would argue, is a linchpin to innovation. An innovation that creates stuff like the microchip, or like Velcro, or like the nuclear atomic bomb, or like a TV dinner, or pasteurized or lifelong milk. And I can go on and talk about the things that immigrants have done to make this country a better place. Or even the food that we eat, America. Think about the food we eat every day, and think about how that helps us spur innovation, quicker ways to get stuff done. All the scientists that come from abroad and work in Silicon Valley, that work on creating new technologies, who work on making sure that our internet is safe, and on and on and on and on. It tells you that the power of immigrants in this country is more than what the Republicans make them out to be. The second reason why immigrants are so important to this country. Immigrants increase workers' wages. A Center for American Progress study found that the U.S. domestic product grew by $1.4 trillion between 2013. Will grow by that amount between 2013 and 2022 if legalization were conferred to undocumented population this year, i.e. meaning that if we make more people legal citizens of this country, we can grow our economy leaps and bounds. And other survey conducted by the Brookings Institute in 2010 found that if immigrants raise the overall standard of living for American workers by boosting wages and lowering prices, immigrant and American workers do not compete for the same jobs. They actually have complementary jobs. In that way, immigrants help increase productivity and wages for the native population, i.e., when there are more immigrants, those who are native get to make more money, i.e., immigrants are basically the linchpin to the creation of the middle class. You heard that? Let me repeat that for you, because that's an interesting logic that, it's an economic logic, but you got to understand. Immigrant and American workers don't compete for the same jobs. So that argument that the Congress makes that they're going to take away American jobs is just not true. They actually compete for two different type of jobs. But those two types of jobs are complementary goods to one another, are complementary jobs, meaning that they benefit each other. I.e., immigrants taking lower wage jobs mean that Native Americans, and not Native Americans like, the native tribes, I'm talking about people who are born in this country, people who are citizens, can take on higher wage jobs. If you get rid of the immigration working community in this country, Americans will be forced to take on lower wages jobs because they will drop the supply or demand for jobs will be in lower wage jobs, and those looking for jobs will go to lower wage jobs. I mean, the people who make higher wages would because the market would bring wages down, and this is a longer economic conversation that I want to get into. But trust me, America, trust me when I tell you that they're complementary goods and they raise wages for everybody. The third reason why immigrants are so important to this country is that immigrants shore up Social Security. According to the chief actuary for the Social Security Administration, undocumented workers paid $15 billion into Social Security. Now, here's the caveat, and here's the ha-ha here, right? Why this is so important. With no intentions of ever collecting benefits, because since they're not citizens, they cannot collect those benefits, meaning they're paying into a system they will never get anything out of. Without the estimated 1.3 undocumented immigrants paying into the system, Social Security would enter a persistent shortfall of tax revenue to cover the payouts starting in 2009. Meaning, without our undocumented workers, we would have a Social Security deficit in 2009 and for the foreseeable future. But because of these 3.1 million undocumented immigrants, they are paying into our Social Security system, making sure that it can stay sure up and solvent for our current seniors. And the fourth reason why immigration is so important in America is because immigrants feed America. The U.S. food system largely depends on immigrant farm workers. According to a 2010 study, over half of the hired farm workers were not authorized to work in the United States. And as a result, immigrants are often exploited with depressed wages and harsh working conditions. However, in a move of the right direction, the protection of immigrant laborers have started in states like California and on and on and on. But at the end of the day, without the power of the undocumented worker, or that should be documented for the record, we don't have the food that we eat. The food that we eat is not as cheap as it is in the grocery store. Just think about that. Think about that for a second. And as we go, this week was May Day, or a day where we celebrate international workers all across the world. And a good friend of mine, he had a column, a column in The Hill, and you should definitely check it out. It's called "Remembering the Need of Immigrant Workers on May Day," and his name is Greg Sandana. He's the executive director for the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, and a good friend to the Fowler Show, and a personal friend of mine. And in his column, he not only speaks to the benefits of of immigration and immigrants, but he also talks about what is in this bill, right? And why this bill works and why this bill doesn't work. The good news is, and he talks about this in the column, in the third paragraph, he goes on to talk about the good news about the bill is that it protects workers. You know, it stops employer retaliation against workers that whistleblow and say that they're being treated, they have horrible working conditions. It allows for those workers to report it to the government in full safety that there will be no retaliation against them. And that's a good thing. But the bill just doesn't go far enough, because the bill doesn't guarantee a pathway to citizenship for everybody, right? While it does help the dreamers and it does help those individuals become U.S. citizens, it doesn't do anything for the domestic workers and the low-wage workers that deserve a chance to become citizens, because they are just as much a part of the American fabric as the college student. And beyond that point, even though the bill promotes E-Verify, and in this column you should definitely read it, he talks about how the fraudulency of the E-Verify. I think it's the wrong word I'm using, but how flawed the program is, because sometimes it flags the wrong employee, it flags the wrong people, and they can't work, and it has discriminatory practices, and on and on and on and on and on. This bill has some good things. This bill has some bad things. But Greg explains it all. You should check his column out in The Hill. We'll be right back on the Fowler Show after this break.